Hey fam, it's Mr. Rashad, your math teacher. Like and subscribe. Tell me what kind of math you like in the comments. Okay, so this is the end quiz review for topic 5. We're gonna solve these systems of equations using the equal values method. So equal values basically says that since this y and this x and this x are the same in both equations, meaning, right, when these lines cross, that x and y are the coordinates of the point where they cross, right? So since this y is equal to this and this y is equal to this and they're the same y, I can take these two equations and set them equal to each other, right? So let's do it right here. So I can say that negative 6x minus 13 is equal to 4x plus 17. Okay, and then we just solve an equation just like normal, right? So what happened is we combined these equations to basically get rid of the y, right? So that we only have one variable in here, right? So I need to bring this x to the left side. We always want to bring our variable to the left and our numbers to the right. So I start out by doing that. Negative 6 minus 4, right? If you're doing your Desmos scientific calculator, which of course I would recommend. I'm not getting paid by them, but I wish I were. Let me do my settings here. Turn it in reverse. Not braille mode. Okay, so I got it right here. I'm going to say negative 6 minus 4. So I just put it in. Negative 6 minus 4 gets me to negative 10. Right? If you struggle with any of these kind of operations, especially with the negatives, please use this calculator, guys. Okay, and then I've got this negative 13, this minus 13 right here. I got to get it to the right side. I don't want to divide by 10 right now because it's going to screw things up, right? It's the order of operations. You have to reverse it. So you always want to get rid of that subtraction or addition before you deal with that multiplication or division. So I add 13 here. Okay, cancels out, and then 17 plus 13 gets me to 30. Again, you just use a calculator for that. Then I've got this negative 10x. You might think, oh, it's a negative, so I need to do the opposite, so I add. Right? Whenever you have a number next to a letter, next to a variable, that means multiplication. So you need to do the opposite, which is division. So you divide by negative 10 on both sides. Make sure you bring that negative through, okay? And we end up getting 30 divided by negative 10 is negative 3. So we're halfway done, all right? So we've got our x value. Now we need to find our y value. So I'm going to take this x of negative 3 and plug it into one of these equations. I don't know. Kind of depends on which one you think is easier. Either way, for this one, it's a toss-up. So I'm going to take that negative 3 and plug it into the second one right there in place of the x, right? It's the similar concept that I was able to substitute this negative 6x minus 13 in the place of that y in that original equation, right? It's all about that substitution, right? You can kind of change things out. Think of like they're modular, I guess. I don't know. Okay, so I got y equals 4, and then I get rid of that x fully. The x fully goes away, and I put that negative 3 in its place. I add 17, and I multiply that out. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. Okay, and again, if you guys struggle with any kind of this math, please use your calculator. Negative 12 plus 17 gets me to y equals 5. Okay, so I've got my solution as negative 3, comma 5. Okay, now if you're like, oh man, I want to get the answer, let's see, where's it? Desmos, the other Desmos app, the graphing app, there we go. Okay, so let me change my settings here. I want to get rid of my underlines. Step one. You can do this on your phone, and you can do this on your Chromebook, right? So I want to put each equation in. So y equals negative 6x minus 13, right there. And then y equals 4x plus 17. And I see where they cross. It seems like it's way... What did I put in here? I put in something wrong here. Oh, 6x minus 13 should be a negative 6x minus 13. There you go. Yeah. See how easy it is to screw this stuff up? Okay. So I've got my, right there, negative 3, 5, which is my answer. Boom. Okay. Please use this to double check answers, guys. Okay. All right. So that was the equal values method. Now we're going to do regular substitution. So I have, let me summarize. You only use equal values when both equations are in slope-intercept form, meaning they're both in y equals mx plus b. Okay. Use regular substitution when one is in ax plus ax plus by equals c, standard form, and when the other one is in that y equals mx plus b, that slope intercept. So when you have two different forms of equations, this is the technique you use. You're going to take this and plug it in for that y right there, right? Very similar, okay? It's all the same concept. You're substituting all these numbers back into these equations to figure it out, okay? So this becomes 6x plus 8. We get rid of that y, and we put in that 2x plus 2 in its place, and we set it equal to 16. And then now, we're steps for solving equations, right? This would be step 1 if you're looking up on the board or up on my steps list up there. You got to distribute whenever you have parentheses, right? So distribute means multiplication, so 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 2 is 16. So I get 16x plus 16 equals 16, okay? And now we're going to combine these two, right? That gets us to 22x plus 16 equals 16. So we're going to subtract right there. And we end up getting 22x equals 0. Please don't let that confuse you if you see a problem like that, right, where it gives you 0. It's okay. 0 is still a number that you can deal with, right? We divide by 22, and we get our x value as 0, okay? It's actually pretty easy to work these when you get zeros, because when you substitute it in, right, it becomes much easier to do your math, right? So if I plug it into the second equation right here, I get y equals 2. I get rid of that x fully, and I replace it with 0, and I add 2. Okay, 2 times 0 is 0, so I get rid of that, and I get y equals 2. Very, very easy. So our solution is 0, comma 2. Please remember the x has to go first and the y has to go second. So you have to be conscious of what number, which is your x and which is your y. No, that's what I'm going to say. All right, double check your work. 6x plus 8y equals 16. Okay, and then y equals 2x plus 2. Y equals 2x plus 2 right there. And we get 0, comma 2 as our answer there, which is what we found. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to do elimination, and on this one, first one's going to be addition. Okay, so you use elimination when both of your equations are in ax plus by equals c, right? So when both equations are in standard form, and you use addition when you have coefficients that are the same number but different signs, right? So you're always looking to eliminate the variable that has the coefficient with the same number, right? So in this case, we're going to be eliminating the y because they both have 2, right? It's the same number right there, right? And I'm going to use addition because I know that this is a plus and this is a minus. This is positive and negative, or addition and subtraction. So I know that they're going to cancel out when I add them, okay? So I add here, and this 1x plus 3x gets me to 4x. And then 2y plus a negative 2y gets eliminated. And then 10 plus 6 is 16. So what I did here was I took these two fairly complicated equations and I combined them together to make something much, much simpler, okay? And at this point, it goes directly back to this, right? Well, sorry, let's finish this off. We divide by 4 here, and we get x equals 4. Okay, so now we've got our x value. Now it goes back into when we're substituting it in, right? Okay, the exact same step. So I'm going to take that x equals 4, plug it into one of these equations, whichever one looks easier, probably the first one right there. So this becomes 4 plus 2y equals 10. Now, if you look at this equation, you're like, oh, God, I don't know what to do. Remember, you can switch these around, and it might make a little bit more sense because that's kind of like the traditional format that might make it easier. Did I do that right? Yeah. So, right, so let's just do kind of on both sides. This is a positive 4, so you want to subtract it where you're adding, right? So that's kind of how you would do it either way, right? And then it becomes the same in either format, right? So it's going to get you the same answer, right? Depending on how it makes sense to you, I suppose. Then you divide by 2, and we get y is 3. So our solution is our x value of 4 and our y value of 3. Okay, and again, let's double check our work on Desmos. Right? So I've got x plus 2y equals 10. And 3x minus 2y equals 6. Again, each of these equations makes a line, and the objective is to see where they cross. And so we got 4, 3, which is what we got. Okay, so double check your work with Desmos, or you can do it on your phone. You can do it on your Chromebook or whatever. Okay. Okay. So again, we're going to eliminate one of these variables. We're actually going to get rid of the x this time instead of the y. I know that I'm getting rid of my x because it's the same number. It's the same coefficient out front of my variables. I'm going to use subtraction because they're both the same sign. They're both positive. Okay. So I subtract here. 6x minus 6x is 0. 2y minus 1y is y. And then 10 minus 8 is 2. So actually this one made it super, super easy because I don't even have to divide by anything, right? I know my y value is 2. Now the trick when you get the y value instead of the x is that you got to substitute into the y value instead of the x. So again, choose which one is easier. I'm probably just going to do the second one because it's a 1y. Okay, so I've got 6x. Again, I'm not plugging it in for the x this time. I'm plugging it in for the y because it's y equals 2. Okay, so 6x plus 2 equals 8. All right, and now I subtract that 2, and I get 6x equals 6. Now this is a really easy problem. And then we've got multiplication here, so I got to do the opposite or the inverse to divide, and I get an x value of 1. So 1, 2 is our solution. Right, you'll notice that I know my x is 1, so I plug it in for the first one, right? That xy in the solution, right? In the coordinate. So 6x plus 2y equals 10. 2y is 10. Nope. There we go. And then 6x plus y equals 8. And then our solution should be 1, 2, which, boom, it is. Okay, again, please use this calculator, right, to double check your work. Okay, now, sometimes you'll have equations that are, in standard form, that ax plus by equals c, but they don't have the same coefficient. So what you've got to do is figure out what number to multiply one of these equations by. Now, what we could do, we could multiply this second equation by 5 to be able to eliminate our y values, okay? Or we could multiply this first equation by 12 to eliminate our x values. I think that one's a better option. So I'm going to multiply by 12. Okay, 3 times 4 is 12x. 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. And 3 times 9 is 27. Again, if you struggle with that kind of math, please use the calculator. Okay, so now I rewrite the second equation right here. Okay, and now I have the same coefficient. I have the same number out front, until that means I'm going to eliminate my x's, right, to make this a much simpler equation. Now, since they're the same sign, they're both positive, we're going to subtract, right? So then at this point, it becomes just like this right here, okay? So I subtract by 12. 12x minus 12 is 0. Negative 15 minus a negative 1. Okay, use your Desmos calculator, right? So if this is confusing, you're like, ooh, I don't know all those negatives in there, right? So negative 15 minus a negative 1. Okay, oops. There we go. Gives us a negative 14. Okay, so negative 14y, and then 27 minus 13 is 14. Okay, so now we're going to get rid of that negative 14, bring it over to the other side. 14 divided by negative 14 is a negative 1. Again, use your calculator. Okay, now I'm going to take this and plug it in. I'll probably do the second equation. So now I'm at 12x minus a negative 1 equals 13. Make sure you carry all those negatives through, right? It's probably more appropriate to put that in parentheses when you plug it in, right? So now I've got these two negatives, right? When you multiply these two negatives together, it becomes a positive, right? Technically, it's negative 1 times negative 1, which is to say positive 1. So 12x plus 1 equals 13. We'll subtract 1 on both sides. We get to 12x equals 12. We divide by 12. What time is it here? On both sides, and we get an x value of 1. So our solution, make sure you put your x value first, so that positive 1 goes first, and then the negative 1 goes second. Okay? All right. So again, going back to the calculator, you guys are probably sick of it at this point, but it's a great tool. Please use this in high school. Okay, let's see. 4x minus 5y equals 9. And then 12x minus y equals 13. 12x. That gets 1, -1, which that was our solution. Hey, look at that. Okay, now for this last one, I think I'm just going to have you write the system of equations, not solve it. So we've got Ivan, about a total of 12 boxes of Girl Scout cookies for Mr. Winter. A box of Thin Mints costs 5, and a box of Adventurables costs 6. Ivan spent a total of $65. How many boxes of each kind of cookie did Ivan buy? Now, remember, we're going to make 2 equations because systems of equations, like these are all 2 equations, right? Or at least 2 equations technically. But we've got to do 2 equations. Sorry, brainwave there. We're dealing with the number of cookies and the cost of cookies. So the first equation is going to deal with the number of cookies, and the second equation will deal with the cost of the cookies. Okay, so I'm going to say that X is the number of Thin Mints, okay, and Y is the number of Adventurables. So the first thing, right, X was the number of Thin Mints. And these are boxes of Thin Mints, right? And Y is the number of boxes of Adventurables, right? Not individual cookies. Okay, so we know that he bought a total of 12. So if my first equation is dealing with just the number, I know that he bought 12 of them. So we would just say equal 12, equal to 12. And now I know that like X is the number and Y is the number of each of those, so I can just put them together like that. Super simple, okay? The second equation is how much they cost, right? I know that boxes of Thin Mints cost 5, and I know that Thin Mints are my X, so I can just say 5X. And I know that Adventurables are 6, and I know that Adventurables are my Y, so that's 6Y. I add those 2 together, and then we figure out how much he spent, and that's it. I'm not going to ask you to solve that. Okay, I'm just asking you to write it. Okay? Yeah, I think that's how it's going to work. Anyway, there you go, guys.